of two small children. Tonight we're bringing, or this afternoon we're bringing you here to just discuss the wastewater treatment plant proposal that is currently in the Environmental Registry of Ontario. And the goal for tonight is to shed some light on some of the details available in that proposal and to guide you through the ERO process. So we're hoping at the end of this presentation that you'll feel a little bit more empowered and inspired to share your voice, your thoughts, and your comments on the ERO. So Joni is joining us here from the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy. She's going to take us through the beginning of the presentation, which talks a little bit about the importance of Goulais River and its watershed and how it's a part of a much larger, important watershed. And then we'll go through some of the details in and around the supporting documentation for this proposal. So I'll hand it back to you, Joni.
I'm not a scientist. I'm just liking to share that to say in the ERO response, that would be the action taken from this. We are going to provide you with a really 1, 2, 3, here's how it is, and a very quick process that won't take you more than 10 minutes to do, just to reassure you, because there's a lot here. Okay, let me get started quickly by, first of all, I want to recognize Goulais River. Goulais River is sitting with us here, and in fact, I will bring the river over and uncap the jar to listen to our words today. Joanne Robertson, who lives on the Goulais, shared with me, who was responsible in large part for helping an elder, Josephine Baumandamin, to get on her water walks around the Great Lakes. And I want to acknowledge that this river that has been flowing by for thousands of years, sustaining life here, is ongoing and a living thread of this community. I want to take a moment to also thank Jen for the enormous amount of work that she has done on this this project and delving into it. I'm part of, as the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy, that I'll give you just a little highlight about what we are as an organization and why we are here today to support this work. I'm part of the Great Lakes Network, which is a network of organizations throughout the Great Lakes that are convened by Freshwater Future. And I hear of these stories all the time through the Great Lakes of individual citizens who take it upon themselves to spend hours, weeks, months, and years of their lives working on certain issues in a very detailed way and breaking it down and connecting with community and bringing us all together. Jen, it's a gift for our organization to even play a role in this work, because as I'll show you, this is what we're here for. So Freshwater Future provided us with grant funding to hold Goulais River water care gatherings, and the funding will also support a future water quality monitoring program, which we'd be doing in partnership with Nordic at Algoma University. This is not set in stone yet, but they're very organized to do this work. So I'll be talking to that. And the grant funding that they also provided enabled us to hire a wastewater treatment system expert, Anne Egan at R.J. Burnside and Associates, and she provided a high-level analysis of the assimilative capacity study and reviewing of the Searchmont wastewater proposal. So this material is in part the basis of the materials we're providing to you, and Jen will be talking to you all about this. I just want to give you a quick, to just center us in the place of listening to Goulais River flowing past us. We all know this beautiful place is, as Josephine reminded us walking around the Great Lakes, water is sacred, it is life, and we are made of 3/4 of it. And what we do to it, we do to ourselves. And so it makes life not only possible for downstream inhabitants from Searchmont Resort or from the top of the watershed, for all birds, animals, fish, and other myriad life beings, plants, animals, trees. So we have this map here if you want to explore it in more detail later, but it is the watershed of Goulais River. And, you know, Goulais River is very long if you stretch it all out. And it's a really, it's not just, it's okay, there I've marked Searchmont so you can see where we are in relation to the whole watershed. And water reminds us of the continuity and connectivity that we have to the much larger picture. So Goulais River is more than a line on a map. Goulais River is part of a family of watersheds. So the work of the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy in the blue area around it reminds you that Goulais River watershed is 75% forested. Remember, forest also includes the soils, the groundwaters, and all the way up to the canopy, that this whole world is sustained by water. And here we are with the Goulais River. I should put the little flag in there so you can see. You all know where you are, but I love maps in the context because it's really important. Context of watershed is the way in which all other life works. The lines that we put on maps geopolitically are not real lines that are recognized. The lines of watersheds and rivers and all. I just love, you know, to think about all of the beings that are being affected by the impacts, but the good work that is being done here to remind us that this is a very important ecological region in all of the Great Lakes. And Jen will talk a bit to that, but it is, as all of the Great Lakes, this Goulais River watershed actually is a very cornerstone, key, diverse, biodiverse region. So who is the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy? We are part of, a friend of ours did this beautiful artwork holding the water in our hands. We're a water care organization, and we have a superior watershed. So we do this through, hi Jess, conservation, education, and active participation. We have a number of programs, and to fulfill our watershed mission, we operate anywhere in the watershed. We're a registered charity in both Canada and the US, sister charities. So that is how we are able to, you know, access funding, create community partnerships. We are part of the Land Trust community, which is probably the most well-known conservation entity in the United States, lesser known here, though we have a robust land trust world in Ontario. But as you can see all around the Great Lakes, these are all the different land trusts that hold preserves. And the 3 red flags on the eastern shore are the preserves that we care for, and as we go through time to augment those. But one of ours is a preserve on Chiwe-Quedong, the place that hugs you. Goulais Bay is a wetland, so we can tell stories of water through wetlands in a public way and educational students. An archipelago of islands off the eastern shore, Nanabajung to Batchewana First Nation, but to others may know it, islands off Lake Superior Provincial Park. An important connection of water to the lake itself. And we also have a top of the watershed preserve. We do work with a big canoe. We worked on the water trail. We've got a lot of projects going, but anyways, creative partnerships can be formed with conservation organizations like ourselves and community partners. And there is a responsibility to do so for future generations. So being specific to the topic today, caring for the Goulais River from now and into the future involves all aspects of their consumption of water, their capacity, their water conservation measures at the front end, and the wastewater processes as it flows through. We all turn on that tap, that water is flowing from somewhere and going somewhere. And the outcome effects of the long-term health of Goulais River, all its inhabitants, including Goulais Bay, are impacted by all of this. So I just pulled out just some quick, just highlight statements from like just a bunch of stuff from ski resorts and magazines and so on about, you know, many resorts are making changes to their practice to help support effective water management. You can just look at them. They're easy to Google. Blue Mountain's done a bunch of stuff. Killington in Vermont. There's a lot out there. Gray water recycling systems, saving water, harvesting rainwater, using gray water systems, recycling wastewater. There are so many things that go into the use of the water in the first place and handling that water with care and thought, and of course, the whole process. Can wastewater be turned into snow? I mean, these are the kinds of questions that what is being done at other ski resorts, but in the world of water use, we in the Great Lakes are hugely responsible on this planet for caring for fresh water. So this is just some, you know, we all have a responsibility to the water and waterways, but as a corporate citizen, they have a very special responsibility because of the enormous consumption of water and flow through. And also, I just will say something about corporate citizens, because as a conservancy, as a land trust, we are a corporate citizen that has a higher standing in court of law than even Goulais River itself, even Indigenous nations, which is really a profound thing. Our land trust has a social business model, but corporations have a model built on finances first, investors first. And to bring that social business model into a business often requires the pressure, support, interest, and hug of a community really engaged and involved. So just last, I think this is my last slide, just an opportunity for a corporate sponsorship or a partnership supporting a long-term citizen-led water quality monitoring program on Goulais River. It does require funding to do it, and the only way it's done effectively is long-term. But it is a great way to engage community in like getting down there, speaking to the river, and doing this really good work that ties into an incredible system of which Nordic, Algoma University's Nordic program with water rangers is doing an amazing job. So we'll jump into Jen's program here, which is why you are here today. And yeah, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Tony.
If you have any questions afterwards, we'll try and let Jen get through it. If you do have anything burning, if you are able to make note of it and ask afterwards, that would be awesome. Yeah, get yourself a seat. And
Thank you, Joni.
I'll get myself a seat, I mean.
Yeah. So I just want to thank everyone again for being here in person and online. We did this presentation last night as well. I'm happy that today we're going to be kind of integrating a few more pieces of information. It's important to note too that with our expert, we're still consulting with her on some of the highlights that we received from her analysis. So if you joined us last night, there's a few things that will come forward that are new to this presentation. But before I get into any of that, in interest to protect myself and my children, I am going to report community awareness and engagement. It reflects my interpretation of publicly available reports, studies, meeting materials, and statements from the proponent and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, also known as the MECP, that's included in the ECA application on the Environmental Registry of Ontario, also known as the ERO. The information presented is based solely on those public documents. I make no claims about the completeness or accuracy of third-party materials, and I do not intend to misrepresent or criticize any individual company or agency. No allegations of wrongdoing are being made. If any information is later shown to be incorrect, I will update it. This material is for general information only and should not be considered legal, technical, or professional advice. Any errors or misunderstandings are unintentional, and I welcome clarifications from the proponent, the MECP, or community members. Thank you for allowing me to get through that. The goal of what we want you to know today is that you're going to receive a lot of information, and this presentation really just gives you a very high level. It's just not humanly possible with time and attention span for us to discuss everything that is worthy of being discussed. So the presentation is going to be high level. The good news is, though, that if you do provide us with your email address and you reach out to the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy, you
Over
will...
on the table.
And we have a couple sheets on the table and a sign-in spot for your email as well. You'll receive 2 attachments. These attachments are going to be the contents of the following presentation and content that is provided and supported and approved. Pasting it on the ERO website. We'd encourage you to put your own comments in addition to what's there, and then submit. It could take under 10 minutes to do that. So I'm going to give you a high level of sort of what we're looking at here. So the purpose of the ERO. The ERO is the Environmental Registry of Ontario. This is where notices like an ECA application or environmental compliance approval application is posted to provide the public with an opportunity to share their thoughts and comments on anything that can impact the environment. So this is the last opportunity for the public to engage in this process. Once this consultation window ends, which will happen at midnight this coming Monday, it goes further into the process, and the public no longer has the opportunity to comment on this proposal. Your voice does matter. We tend to think that once it's in the ERO, it's already out of our hands and there's not much we can do, but that's simply not true. This registry is your opportunity and your only opportunity, and it's going to end very soon. Again, the goal of the event is that you walk away from here and you're able to engage with us to get those documents so that you can submit a comment and feel more empowered to do so. So what is that ECA? It's an environmental compliance approval. The application itself is looking for approval of the SRB wastewater treatment plant and its ability to treat wastewater that's going to be generated by the resort. These are a few images from the design brief to show the system that's being proposed. The ECA, or that environmental compliance approval, really looks at 3 main parts. It looks at the assimilative capacity study, or the ACS. It looks at the proposed SRB's ability to meet the objectives outlined in that assimilative capacity study. And it looks at the effect on the environment, aquatic, and human health, and if it will be affected. The main goal of this ECA is to get approval to discharge affluent into the Goulais River. So what exactly is an assimilative capacity study? To put it in layman's terms, it's the study that shows the river's capacity to receive and the river's ability to assimilate or break down the waste. This study looks at what the current water quality is. It looks at what the flow conditions are like for the river, if the river can receive that waste, if the river could break down that waste, and then it produces what limitations and objectives have to be met by the proposed technology to ensure that there's no environmental harm. So the ECA does, part of the environmental compliance approval process is for there to be pre-consultation before the application is submitted. And during that consultation, there were specific concerns that the ministry highlighted within the assimilative capacity study. In the end, they did accept this study, but there are values in it, which I'm going to take you through to sort of highlight why we need to be aware of what's in that study. This study shows us that the Goulais River is already showing signs of stress. This assimilative capacity study shows that 25% of the downstream phosphorus samples already exceeded the provincial water quality objective without any wastewater in the mix. The river also experiences low flows, bacteria spikes, and limited winter oxygen data. This means that the river may not have consistent capacity to accept nutrients and different contaminants and pollutions.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the Lake Superior Watershed Conservancy for or against this treatment
So the question she asked is if the Great Lakes Watershed Conservancy is for or against this application.
This is a very nuanced question, and this is why the deep dive into this, because we're not against anything. We are the health of Goulais River, and so the concern is the way the process is happening, and a lot of other things behind it. So as we go along with this, we are supporting this deep dive work to help the public see the bigger picture here. I'm going to let Jen speak to this more so you can understand that it fulfills, we're supporting. Yeah. Yeah, we're.
Yeah, and Yeah, and
a very good question.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a very good question.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are wondering if we, even through my presentation, if I'm in support or I'm in favor. Ultimately, my goal is to make sure that we've really fully understood if the river can receive this waste and if it's capable of breaking it down. And what I've come to see in my own digestion of the information available is that there's some pretty significant values that would make me question whether the river can really truly receive this. And so as a member of the public, it's my right and my duty through the ERO process, as it is yours and everybody else that's interested, to make sure that the ministry is holding themselves accountable for the limits that they have set in place, and that they completely and totally have looked at every aspect of that assimilative capacity study and this proposal to make sure that there's not going to be any harm, and to see if there are other options that could be available to manage that waste with their expansion plans.
With the changes in the weather environments, and like you said, the river experiences low flows, bacteria spikes, whatever, so how could you forecast what is going to happen in the future?
Yeah, and that's a great.
Flood times, we haven't had a flood for a long time, but
Yeah.
it's possible.
Exactly, and I think as members of the public, we deserve opportunity to understand have a full understanding of exactly what it means to have wastewater put into the waterway. Like we deserve that right, and if things come up that make us question or seems unclear as to if it's going to be safe, we have the right to know with full confidence that it is. And in saying that too, I just want to share a little bit sort of about my journey with this proposal. So because I lived downstream, I was one of the first people that received sort of a very basic high-level letter to notify me that the Searchmont Ski Resort was putting in an application that intended to deposit wastewater in the Goulais. And so I began consultation with the engineering firm that they hired to put the design brief together. And I was provided with some, basic ministry website pages that showed the requirements of operating a treatment plant, and I was provided with a copy of the assimilative capacity study. I'm not a wastewater expert, I'm not an engineer, so the majority of that study was very hard for me to understand and make sense of, because it's engineer lingo, environmental lingo, and calculations and all of that. So I was assured back in March of this year of 2025 that there would be a public information night that would certainly answer all of my questions. The public information night was held in July here at the local community center. Everybody received about 5 days notice of that event, and at that event it contained 5 display boards, 2 of which were images and 1 which was next steps, and it was very high level information. There were a lot of great questions that came up in that public information night, many of which had to be taken away because they couldn't be answered. And consultation from there would have looked different for everybody who continued to consult with the engineering firm. So in my position and in my experience through this process, I was given very little tangible, meaningful information. It's important to note too that this application, the preparation for this application, took 5 years in the making, and the public was given a 2-hour public opportunity to go over the information. So I'm going to keep going forward in the interest of time, and we can kind of talk about this. There really is, like I said at the beginning, so much to cover, and I don't want to overwhelm everybody. What I'm hoping is to just give you what's high level, and then those attachments that you'll receive from Joni and her crew will give you visibility to all of this and empower you to just take it and use that to empower your voice. This is just a quick screenshot from the assimilative capacity study. This is the downstream water quality results. And you could see over here the spikes that happened. So out of the 20 samples that were taken, we can see that 5 of them for phosphorus already came back over the provincial water quality objectives. And I'll talk about the provincial water quality objectives a little bit more on another slide. But this shows us in detail that 25% of phosphorus samples were over the limit already downstream without any waste in the water. So this is just a quick shot about what is phosphorus and why does Ontario regulate it. So the Ontario Provincial Water Quality Objective for phosphorus is set based on decades of science, knowing that once phosphorus raises to that level in rivers and lakes, it becomes very vulnerable. You can see nuisance algae, cloudy water, oxygen depletion, fish stress, habitat decline, increased drinking water treatment needs, and higher pathogens like E. coli. The provincial water quality objective exists to prevent that algae, those algae bloom that harm ecosystem and the ecosystem and its water quality. So it's not directly harmful to humans. However, the high levels of phosphorus can create conditions that would affect or could affect human health. And that's everything from knowing that certain algae blooms have the potential to produce toxins, increased organic matter, there's more challenges to drinking water treatment, and there's conditions that coincide with that higher E. coli and degraded recreational water quality. So while it's not toxic to human safety, the presence of it can impact other elements of human health.
Did they ever research what happened during the weather patterns or why these events happened? Why the phosphorus went up? I just checked for the month, it was April and June. I thought if there were rainstorms or whatever, what could cause that, causation of that?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can't answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. What they've done is so most lakes and rivers across Ontario actually are monitored for water quality through the provincial government. The Goulais River specifically, they stopped collecting water quality data for it back in 1990. So to prepare for this application, the proponent, or Searchmont Ski Resort in this case, they took on their own sampling Searchmont Ski Resort, the proponent. So they, I would assume, hired their own consultants and they did an independent water monitor quality program. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit too as we get in the slides, because one of the things we would love to recommend to the ministry through the ERO is to say, hey, we would love to partner and have a community-led water monitoring program so that the community has funding so that we can create that water monitoring and hopefully begin that even before it's operated, which builds a level of trust in the community because now you have active citizens who are participating in that monitoring program, who are able to collect that data, send it away legitimately, have it tested, and it's not a monitoring program that sits under the wing of the resort.
And why did the government stop that program in the first place in 1990?
I'm not sure, but that would be an excellent thing to ask through the ERO as well, is either asking for them to reestablish that under their body of authority or to have a community base, but I couldn't answer that, but I would highly recommend that you put that on the ERO because it's an excellent question.
It is a point that we have added because in order to be a legitimate, recognized water quality study, it needs to be done in a certain way. So hence my mention of the Nordic water quality monitoring program, which is highly...
Information about how long the independent study the ski hill undertook went tour in?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, we're gonna get to that too. You're welcome. So just one last highlight about phosphorus. So the Goulais River flows directly into Lake Superior, as Joni shared with us. It's a part of that bigger watershed. Ontario has a Great Lake strategy and a total phosphorus report that highlights that phosphorus-driven algae, major problem in the Great Lakes. Protecting the Goulais River is protecting Lake Superior and honoring the Canada-Ontario Great Lakes Agreement. Those are 3 separate agreements that recognize phosphorus as an existing issue. And again, the ministry should know that. That's their information, that's within their divisions, but it's us as the public to reference those when we're raising concern for phosphorus. Phosphorus, in the assimilative capacity too, it's clear as day that downstream in Goulais, the river is already at the provincial water quality objective, at the 0.030 milligrams per liter. It's already there. It's already at the objective. The proposed treatment plant that they want to use estimates that they'll just slightly go over phosphorus. They'll just slightly raise the downstream concentration of phosphorus just by a hair. But the facts remain the same. It's already at the provincial water quality objective for phosphorus without any waste. But we know when they did their sampling program, they had an upstream location, a point of deposit location, and a downstream location. Where they intend to monitor after it's operating is unclear.
So there's no guidelines as to where it's supposed to be. They could say, well, we're going to do the tippy end of it, and that's where our readings are going to be held. We're not supposed to be held accountable for anything above, so there's no stipulated location where it needs to be read at.
Yeah, and I think that that's an important thing that we propose to them as well, the ministry, is where exactly were these samples taken? Were they done consistently in the same spots? And afterwards, where would they be? For example, somebody we had attending last night said, well, the downstream location collected from the bridge on Highway 17. Well, what would the water quality look like in Goulais Bay after a pulp mill that's there? And we don't know because their downstream sampling location was at the bridge on Highway 17. So maybe we can chat about that after to kind of get into that deeper. But that's something we need to know and would like to know. So if Goulais River downstream is showing that it's at the provincial water quality objective at the bridge on Highway 17, what does the phosphorus levels look like past that bridge? Kind of segue into the next piece. The monitoring data set is too small. So there were only 20 sampling events that were completed with very limited winter sampling over 16 months. And the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks typically expects 2 to 3 years of data in a study like that. In fact, in the opening of the assimilative capacity study, it references an email where the ministry reminded Searchmont that they're to take samples monthly over 2 years or seasonally over 3 years. Yet the final results of their monitoring program data set was based off of 16 months. The ministry then questioned that in consultation as they were finalizing their results for the assimilative capacity study. And it's not exactly clear why they agreed to accept the 16 months data set, which doesn't even meet their standards. So it's crucial, and that's one of the things you'll get in the letter, is that the ministry has that data set guidelines for a reason. And condensing it to 16 months misses the opportunity for them to look at another season of slow summer flow, which is pretty critical. So we want to make sure that the ministry holds themselves accountable to their own standards.
Are they located here in the sewer, or is it all going down to Toronto or somewhere?
I'm not
Main
100.
Street, like-
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do know it's the environmental permissions branch that's responsible for this application. So you can reach them through the ERO website or by email or phone.
But you don't know if any of them are here in the Sioux?
I don't believe they have a branch in the Sioux yet.
To frame it within our provincial context right now too, we're at another layer of challenge with a provincial leadership that is very much under prioritizing the health of the
Yeah.
natural world.
Yeah. Another thing that that's important to mention too this is for the monitoring data set for water quality. The other thing that's important to mention too, and this is a picture of a low flow season. Just for context, if you were to stand in this spot when it's at high flow, you could potentially be 15 feet underwater or more. This is in a relatively low state, but it's been much lower than that. So water withdrawals, this is a huge piece that I want to highlight and focus on. It doesn't appear that we know the resort holds a permit to take water. In fact, they're allowed to take 11.5 million liters a day for snowmaking and 131,000 liters a day for portable water, actively, right now. The withdrawals would reduce the river's flow and dilution capacity, especially in the winter months, but it doesn't appear that that's been assessed in the assimilative capacity study. So how it works for the assimilative capacity study is they took the data from upstream, up Whitman Dam Road, and did back calculations to estimate what they figured the flow conditions would be like. However, if you're taking this amount of water, surely the depth of what will be flowing would be impacted. And to give you a bit more context on that, picture a 10,000 liter water truck and then picture 1,150 of those trucks lined up. That's how much would be taken a day under that permit. Now, they may not take that full amount right now, but they are legally allowed through a permit that went through the ERO in 2021 to take that amount of water.
Do you know at what point they're at now in taking water? Like what amount?
So
That's a good.
So they have a duty to report how much water they take under that permit, but it's only accessible through a Freedom of Information Act request. So it's that other layer there, and those requests usually take 6 to 8 weeks to come through. So it would be helpful to have that information because we'd want to know, are they already taking a sufficient amount of what they're permitted to take? Or would they need then another permit to take even more once they, grow 200 to 100-room hotels, a conference center, an extra restaurant, in addition to the existing restaurant, all of which are detailed in their expansion plan. So to segue into the next one, I love this picture and it relates to the slide as well. The species at risk study and the environmental impact assessment is not complete. The design brief tells us that they retained an environmental firm to do these studies and that it's in progress and that those studies would be added to the design brief under Appendix H once available, but now we're only days out and those studies are still not available. The whole purpose of the ERO is to provide us with the opportunity to comment on things that can affect the environment, but the environmental impact assessment or study is not yet available for our review. What we do know as well through the design brief is that in 2019, the resort did have an environmental impact statement done. And that statement in itself, just for the adjacent pond on their land, identified 13 different species at risk. Lake sturgeon, the wood turtle, and multiple at-risk bird species. It also identified there's certain turtle wintering and amphibian breeding habitats. So the public can't necessarily comment meaningfully on the impact to the environment or advocate for species at risk if those assessments were not available for our review. And I just want to take a quick minute to do a little storytelling here and how it's relevant to this. This particular image is of my daughter and I, my little squeak up there, taking a river run. Just above this image is where the waste would be deposited into the river. And if you know the Goulais River as well as I do, you know that at the point of deposit, it's typically pretty low. And immediately after that section of the river, it goes through a small set of rapids that is, typically of very small depth. And immediately after that first set of rapids is this pool of water. On this side of the picture, what you can't see is where the old paper mill side was. And this big sand bay here is the sand hill that runs along the Finn Road. And right around the corner, there's a massive rock. It's one of the deepest spots that I know of in the river. And on the other side of it is another set of shallow rapids. And why that's important that I feel like it's important to bring up is because in my experience, I have witnessed this as such a sanctuary for juvenile lake sturgeon. You'll often see small sturgeon that can't go upstream and they can't go downstream because the water level just wouldn't allow it. And this is the first deep pool on the river after the discharge site.
Where exactly is the plant gonna be? We never did ever hear that.
Yeah, so the plant will be on the property itself, but the waste will go into the river right where the river sort of meets up with the railroad track. So when you're coming in towards Searchmont Resort, it's on the left before you cross the railroad track and turn into the resort.
Yeah.
So another key piece, this is cumulative effects were not fully assessed. So it doesn't appear that assimilative capacity study evaluates the water that's being withdrawn from the resort, septic beds upstream and downstream. There's several people that live on the river or within the watershed that have septic beds. There's doesn't appear there to be consideration for storm water runoff, forestry and land disturbances, or even the Hydro One North Shore Link power proposal, which intends to build a power line that runs mostly alongside the Searchmont Highway and would run through several smaller creeks that run into the Goulais River. It doesn't assess climate-driven low flows or future expansion plan needs for water or snowmaking. So if they already, again, have a permit of that size, will they need another one for their expansion? The cumulative effects assessment would be essential for the river because it flows directly into Lake Superior. And it's not really clear how or if these effects were considered or addressed or how they're going to be monitored. Community engagement was sort of minimal. Everyone had their own unique experience depending on how much time and effort and energy was invested into it. What we do know is that those key documents, like the environmental impact study and the species at risk study, weren't available during the comment period, and there was no public meeting available to walk us through what's there. Community conversation and discussion collectively appears to share that same sense of overwhelm and confusion, and that's just not suitable. We should have the professionals that understand wastewater, that understand environmental impacts, standing up here and taking us through this proposal and being available to address all of the questions that come forward in detail, and we should have fair opportunity to do that. Some of the requests that we're hoping to send to the ERO, and these are going to be embedded in those attachments that you get. So again, those attachments that you're going to get from Joni and her crew are going to contain 2 attachments, one that has the non-expert or document-based concerns that we've highlighted here today, and then the expert concerns. So the request that we're asking for in the non-expert attachment is going to be asking them that before any approvals, that we would love to see a revised, scientifically defensible assimilative capacity study, proper mix modeling that we can see, multi-year monitoring, including winter and low flow conditions, full incorporation of the wastewater treatments plant or the water taking permit in the flow calculations. We want completion and public release of those species at risk studies and environmental impact studies, a detailed understanding of those studies and what those mitigation strategies will be, what the accumulative effects will be, and plans for monitoring, demonstration of compliance with Policy 2 for phosphorus and the safety plan. So Policy 2 is something the government says that if a water quality value, like phosphorus, meets that provincial water quality level, no further degrade of water quality is allowed. Yet this proposal steps over that by saying it's at that level downstream, and this proposal will take it over. So one thing that's not on the slide that is new tonight that wasn't here yesterday is, and because we're still in that active consultation with our wastewater expert, Freshwater Futures is a non-for-profit over in Sioux, Michigan. They were able to provide us with limited funding, but very generous funding to have us be able to retain a wastewater expert. We found this wastewater expert through an association called the Ontario On-Site Wastewater Association. She has over 20 years in wastewater management, and she was able to provide us with a high analysis of the proposal. It's important to mention that she did not do a detailed study or view of the assimilative capacity study. She looked at, can the proposed treatment plant they want to build meet the objectives outlined in the assimilative capacity study? And then she produced incredible, detailed comments for us to consider, which you will see in one of those attachments. But I'm just going to take you through just a high level of what those main comments were. Wastewater strength may be underestimated. Peak flows may be higher than the design assumes. No screening or grit removal is included. No redundancy in UV disinfection and filtration. Insulation and cold water considerations are missing. Risk of groundwater infiltration, no backup powered mentioned, no monitoring plan included, an assimilative capacity study may not have enough data, and nitrate limit may be based on incorrect unit conversions. Now that's a lot to take in. I'm not asking you to digest that, but what we're saying is in that letter, what you'll see is an understanding, a public-friendly understanding of what she's trying to say. One of the 17 comments she gave us, which was her biggest concern, was in and around the way that the waste is categorized. So in the proposal, she highlighted that the proposal states that the wastewater will all be sort of classified as residential waste. However, in the proposal, where it shows what the predicted waste output will be and where it'll come from, around 50% of that is from a more industrial, commercial grade waste, from kitchens and food waste and grease and all those other things. And so what she highlights in there is that the quality of the affluent may estimated. If she knows that 50% of the waste produced is commercial quality, but they're categorizing it all as residential waste, that could impact the system's ability to break down that waste, and it could impact the quality of the waste that then enters the river. So I'm going to leave it at that because it's a lot to digest, but that's a huge point, and we're hoping to have it fully verified with her and our understanding of it, and then it'll be in that letter that you can then open, copy, paste, put your own thoughts, and send. So to kind of in closing, again, it's not about opposing development. It's about ensuring that any development that happens doesn't harm the Goulais River. This river is ecologically important, culturally valued, and directly connected to Lake Superior. In fact, in the design brief, it recognizes Goulais River as having one of the most diverse fish populations in all of Ontario. It recognizes that. It recognizes 13 species at risk that are already there. Lake sturgeon alone, science shows us, are 150 million years old, and they're endangered. This is about our right to have meaningful consultation, fair opportunity to understand the full extent of how a wastewater treatment plant can impact the environment, aquatic health, and human health. It's our right to advocate, protect, and to defend those endangered species from going extinct. My youngest baby here, it's about doing what's ethnically and morally right as members of this community. If not for ourselves, for our children and our children's children and their grandchildren's children. So in kind of the final wrap up, we're really hoping We understand that there's a lot of information. We've taken the work out of it for you. We've put this information into these accessible documents.
And the next slide shows the steps.
Yeah,
That's what we'll...
And you'll also receive the step-by-step instructions of how to do it. So you really will get...
And my phone number.
And
So,
Joni's phone number if you need
I will walk
help.
through it.
Exactly. So, and another thing that's important to mention too, is that there is a Facebook group. It's called We Must Guard the Goulais River. It's been out for about 2 months, and we're at about 150 or 750 people so far. The group does have more detailed posts that focus in on some of these topics. We encourage you to go to that, contribute in that community, share your thoughts and comments in there. Look at the posts of what other people are sharing and use that information to help form your own comments. There's no limitation to how many times you can comment. What we're hoping for with all of the information that we've given you is that you know that those 2 attachments that you get, if you leave us your email or reach out to Joni, make it easy. You just open the attachment, copy the material, click the link, it'll bring you right to the comment box for that posting. You put it in there, edit it the way you feel fit, put your comments in there, whatever feels right to empower you, or simply write your own and hit submit before midnight this coming Monday.
So is the bottom line that the Searchmont Resort and their consultants are trying to push this through with a bunch of information that most of us don't understand? Is that what their bottom line is?
Yeah, so, and I'm using the mic just to reframe your question so that it gets picked up on the live stream. So maybe I'll bring it over and you can kind of repeat that, just so it's picked up.
Is the Searchmont Resort and their consultants trying to push this through with a bunch of information most lay people don't understand?
And thank you for that question. This is one it would be, it's interesting to comment on this because what we know is that all of the information is available. Now the onus is on us to read it and understand it. So I think indirectly, it's what is your experience through the proposal? Did you feel like you had fair opportunity to consult? Do you feel like the information's accessible and digestible? And that's what we want to advocate for ourselves and the community to the ERO. Did you feel that you had opportunity to bring this forward?
Well, my husband and I are lifelong residents here, as you know, and we're concerned about what goes into the river, and especially at flood time. Like, you're too young to remember when we had a great big flood here. Your dad, I'm sure, knows, but the water comes up, 15, 20 feet. We're running around on the highway here, we're in boats and motors and everything. Nobody remembers that. We do.
Yeah.
So what happens to this treatment plant when that happens?
Yeah, and that's a question I've had too. I actually, have a little line on a pole in my basement to mark that significant events well before I was born. Yes, that and I remember my grandma saying, this is what may happen every 100 years, just an FYI. One thing that comes to me when I think of that is the saturation in soil. So my garden bed, my whole property is in the floodplain. So when it floods every year, even when it's not a significant flood, my whole property is saturated in that water. And when it recedes, whatever's left is in that water in my garden bed. So like you, I also have questions. We want to know that it's going to be safe. We looked at. So, the proponent and the engineers did advise that based off of the expansion plans that they have, that this option is deemed the best one. And there was 4 main reasons why they gave them, and I don't know them exactly off the top of my head, but one of them was that there was a lack of space to expand their septic beds. And so, just from a curiosity standpoint, we can look at concepts like, is there opportunity to compromise? Could the expansion plans be condensed to allow for the use of an inland option? Ultimately, I'm not the expert and I can't comment on that, and I can't influence what they want to do for their business plans, but as a member of the public, I would love to know what options were considered. And something Joni said in the beginning was that, you know, there's other ski resorts in North America, even in the province, that are using effective, successful waste conservation management protocols and water need protocols. There's even news releases that show that some resorts have successfully turned their wastewater into snowmaking water. So there's technology out there, from my understanding, that is available. It's just understanding, is the resort even aware that these that may be available? What we do know from the documentation is that it says in March of 2020, when Searchmont and their consultants sat down with the ministry for their initial kickoff, that they already brought the idea of a wastewater treatment plant using the Goulais as the receiver as an idea. But there's nothing in the documentation that specifies what other options were looked at.
I was at the meeting last July, and I spoke with President.
Should I bring it over?
This person is President Engineering, and I asked him what came first. How did that whole thing start? Was it that the resort said to the ministry, "Hey, listen, we have to build something new, and give me what is doable? What can we do?" Or did the ministry say, "Listen, your system is so old, you need to upgrade because it is old. Let's face it, it's really outdated." Okay. Or was there a money value attached to it? And Mr. Crescent said, "Well, if we had more money, we could do so much better." It was basically saying from the resort, that's what I had witnesses there. He said the resort came, he's just the engineer doing the plan. But the resort basically said, "We have this much available. What can you give us?" And you know what this much available is? It's about this much. If you go to a responsible corporation and somebody who cares, you should, and like you said, there are other ways you can treat that water in a much better way, not as irresponsible as, in my opinion, just my opinion, as this. But it was really given, give me the best you can get with that little bit of money, and hope to God it's gonna go.
Yeah.
That's how it started, and that really, and other people heard that. I couldn't believe it. And now we have, as of yesterday, I'm sure you saw Sue yesterday and the day before. Did you see that the water treatment plant in Sioux, Michigan overflowed? Did you read that? And there was this great big thing, and the first thing I thought of Searchmont, right?
Well, and do they have a backup plan if something like that happened?
They didn't incorporate a buffer for overflow or anything.
I'm sorry?
They didn't incorporate any buffer opposed to having more but needing less.
Yeah, and
Can I just say, I want to remind everyone too, as you look at the maps, to remember that this place where this ski resort is situated is very contextually important to understand that it's on a river. So if you take like another example of a ski resort that's sited on the Great Lakes like Blue Mountain, it's drawing from a vastly larger water body, not to say that there are all kinds of environmental impacts. But it is not just about starting from the resort and the out, it's the input. And I think this is an age-old story of the way we value fresh water. This is a whole huge issue throughout the Great Lakes. Freshwater Future holds monthly meetings for large water withdrawals with partners all over the Great Lakes. Many of them have to do with data centers and that. But that's okay. Anyway, so large water withdrawals are a huge issue in the Great
as well and Joni kind of tied into this too about like corporate citizenship, right? Like that corporate citizen or citizens available. So there's a lot of questions, and I think it's really important that we take that and your experience through consultation and share that with the ministry before midnight on Monday. Just to kind of talk a little bit about something that I walked away from the public information night having concerns for was around failure protocol. So the display board said that the system was so sophisticated that it had very low likelihood of failure. And so I went up to one of the engineers and I said, it has low likelihood of failure. That's amazing. If I understand correctly, you're admitting that there's likelihood of failure, it's just low, right? And it was confirmed yes. And then I said, again, that's great. Can you tell me, from the point that a toilet's flushed to the point it hits the river, what are all the potential opportunities for failure? How would they be monitored? Who would recognize them? Who would fix them? What would the impact be? And what's the duty to advise us that are downstream? And I was told I'm not sure how to answer that. So I continued consultation after that public information night on that point specifically. And it was affirmed to me by Christian Engineering that environmental, human, and mechanical failure would be evaluated, and the protocol and documentation for that would be using that to your advantage to give me reassurance. Then I would hope that you could back that up. So to be later confirmed that that hasn't even been analyzed made me question everything in those display boards.
The other factor too is once that gets put into operation, it's no longer these engineering firms maintaining the system anymore, right? So it sounds like we're talking about a design that's close to the edge, maybe within the limits, right? But then over the years, that system needs to be maintained. Pumps wear, filters plug, valves seize, electronics fail, right? That needs to be maintained. And what you're talking about assessing all the failure points, it's called the failure modes and effects analysis, right? And that should go into the maintenance strategy of the people who, again, lost days this year because of maintenance issues, destroyed a lift because of maintenance practices, right? So.
And thank you for adding that point too, and to support what you've said as well. In that CBC interview, the resort did clarify that, everything up until it's built and operated is out of their hands, but operation of it will be managed by the resort. And another thing that our expert that we hired shared with us is that the system that they want to use, which I believe is called the Napa Reed SRB wastewater treatment system, is a good system by design, but it will rely heavily on proper maintenance. And
Is that in the proposal?
what's that?
Like fees to cover said maintenance, right? Because if you hire a firm to give you an analysis of what they think and how to build it, is the maintenance of these systems, though the onus is on Searchmont to maintain it, is there budget within their proposal to have an engineering firm confirm their maintenance, or is it like totally the onus on them?
So my understanding of it would be that the resort would be legally required to hire a trained technician in wastewater management to manage the site, but it's not clear if that technician would oversee all components of it or if they would just be there for specific pieces. What we do know is that the resort would, yes, be responsible for all of operation for that treatment plant. Now, in saying that, they would also be subjected to routine ministry visits. One thing that kind of we can segue into maybe is the MECP order that's also used in the design brief. So in the top of the...
MECP is Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks.
Thank you. The acronyms are so ingrained, I just spew them out and I forget to reiterate what they are. The design brief, which is 461 pages, if you've seen it, at the very top it talks about a ministry, it talks about an MECP order, or the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks order. And essentially what that order says is that during a routine sewage inspection done by the MECP in March of 2024, that they went to the resort and they had noticed that the resort had renovated their existing villas to move from 12 units to 16 units, which was not permissible under the current ECA that they have. And so in the design brief, it sort of leverages that MECP order in a way that says, hey, the ministry came, they checked us out. Turns out that we're not even operating, we don't even have a septic system that can support what we have, so we really need to have this wastewater treatment. With the ministry in 2020, because they knew they wanted to expand and their existing system didn't have the capacity, why were those renovations completed after that conversation? Most importantly, us as the public have a right to ask the ministry that if the resort has not met the terms of their current environmental compliance approval for the system that they have, what reassurance do we have that they will abide by and meet the terms of the new environmental compliance approval that they're asking for?
That's what we were concerned about too, and a lot of people in the community that I've been talking to are concerned about who's going to monitor this when it gets running. And they have a hard time getting competent people over there to begin with, to run their own hill. So how are they gonna do this, and will they doctor it up anyway?
Yeah, and
Incompetent people.
And I think, like, what I would love to speak to on that is just the idea that naturally we can't really even speculate on what their business practices are, what their, we really just, in this specific moment in time, the focus is on the fact that they're asking for this environmental compliance approval, and you, using whatever experience you have or your observations, it's your right to share that and vocalize that through this process. And I highly recommend that you do. And like I said too, there's no limitation to what you can submit. You can submit one comment for every point and sort of elaborate on what exactly you want to speak to. The letters you're going to get from Joni are comprehensive. You can paste it all in one, add a couple notes for every section to contribute your own unique voice, or you can take one part, put it in, like you could, whatever's easiest for you, it's all there. All of the referenceable, strong information that you can use is there to show credibility in your involvement and to make your unique voice paired with it even stronger.
Well, I think the trust isn't there for the community, for them to monitor it. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, and I think that I've heard that a lot in just my own community conversations too. I speak for myself when I say this, that even my own experience in consultation for this proposal has not been adequate to my own individual standards. There's just so many things that I didn't understand and that I wanted to know and that were just not available to me. And that was sort of one of the other things that kind of caught me by surprise once the application was officially posted. So to back up here, the letter that I received in March told me that I had 14 days to consult with the proponent or the engineering firm. Now, that was just the window they gave me. When I challenged that window, I was told that consultation would continue and that's fine and it would go on past the 14 days, but they were hoping to get the application in by the end of March. And then they were hoping to get the application in at the end of July. The public information night happened July 16th of 2025. We were notified of it 5 days before, and it was only a 2-hour-long event. After that, like I said, it happened on the 16th. After that, there was some media attention that was received through Sue Today around the displays, the display boards and the public information night and some of the query that came up about it. And then there was also a letter to the editor from a member of Batchewana who kind of spoke about their concerns. And the design brief shows us that it includes consultation records. So anybody who reached out to the engineering firms, who emailed or reached out to the resort, they were listed in there as having consulted with a summary of what their consultation was about. What I found alarming was that when I pulled up my section, it did not include anything that I had chatted about with them. Nothing. There were other people in the community who had concerns for water quality, water health, aquatic health, all of that were summarized under their name. But for mine, there was nothing. So one of the things I did with the ministry, when that came out, and I seen 461 pages, I went, whoa, how do I, as just a, everyday citizen with no engineer, no wastewater background, digest this? And what I found most disturbing was just that all the consultation that I had done with them over the phone and over email and in person was just not accounted for. So I then had to re-summarize all of that and put it through the ERO. And truthfully, it was probably better done through that path anyways, because it's in my full true voice. And that's just what I've done. So everything that you're bringing up and everybody's bringing up here needs to go on the ERO before midnight on Monday. Once it closes on Monday, the ERO process where we're at right now is the starting process of this whole proposal. So how it works is they are gonna, and if there's a chart, and I should have had it in the slide, but there's a tree, and it shows proponent or business wants to have a wastewater treatment plant. Okay, they do an assimilative capacity study. They talk with the ministry about it. Then it gets applied for. Once it's applied for, this is our only opportunity as the public to have our say, the only one. Once this closes, the ministry will then look at the whole design proposal, they'll look at the whole assimilative capacity study, and they'll look at everything the public wants to know or doesn't know. They're gonna look at all, and they'll look at environmental impacts. The ministry is there with the assumption and the hope that that design brief is thorough and accurate and meets all their blocks. I imagine the ministry is going to take a fine-tooth comb through it, but when you pair it with public consultation and you have multiple unique voices stepping forward and saying, I don't have trust, or I didn't feel like consultation was proper, or I'm worried about failure protocol, or I'm wondering what happens past the downstream spot where you collected data, or what happens if we have a high flood, or what happens if there's low flow.
And what happens to the species at risk?
Yeah,
And
what
the
happens,
environmental assessment that hasn't been completed.
And some of us eat the fish in this river. We want to know that it's safe. Some of us live on the river. We spend time in there. It's our right to know that. And there's just too many pieces of this proposal that just aren't clear, that just raise a lot of question, raise a lot of concern.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Who, and I should know this, who provides the water permit? Is that the ministry?
That is also done through the ERO.
Yeah.
And what happens is they did one in 2019, and then they asked for another one in 2021. It's essentially the same process as this. The permit goes in, it's open for consultation, and then it's finalized.
Yeah.
If I don't quote me on this, but I don't think any comments were received for that water permit. But with water taking permits, there's also not the same duty to notify. Mm-hmm. So in one of the attachments we have actually is a reference to that specific ERO number. And if you pull it up on the ERO, it'll show you the exact values of what they're allowed to take with that water permit that's active right now.
I don't want anyone to feel that I know this is your Saturday, we've reached 1:30. If you just want to be able to get up and, put your name information down, we can be here for as long as you want. I just don't want to lose anybody from the opportunity if you have anything before you leave.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Because that is a whole other area, which is absolutely, to me, I didn't know that, but the permit itself is a pretty mind-blowing number.
Yeah.
And compared to, from the large water withdrawal issues, making comparison, you had some good comparisons to what 11 million gallon permit looks like.
And that's upstream
And that's upstream from where yeah, so they would be pulling water and depositing it back. One other thing that just kind of, that came through too is like to keep in mind that the expansion.
Those are interesting to read.
It is, yeah, like 1,150 of these trucks filled with water. But one thing that's important to remember too is that the whole plan for and the need for this wastewater plant is because of the how much they want to expand.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming. Is how much they want to expand. So, because they would like to be year-round operational. So, it's important that we recognize that too, because let's say it's middle of July and their business is booming, and maybe it's with, you know, motorcycles and hiking trails and four-wheeling and inland fish lakes and all of that. Let's just say that they're full operational in the middle of the summer, and they have two 100-room hotels. What will be their need for overwhelmed? You're not alone. Just know that if we can get your email, you'll receive, not right away, but you will receive before the deadline, those 3 attachments, one with steps of how to do it, one that has the experts' recommendations and why it's important that they're considered, and then the non-expert or documentation derived comments that I took you through here. And again, open the attachments, copy them, paste them, send. You're welcome also to forward that email to anybody that you know that may be interested, and I would recommend that you engage in the conversation with anybody that you feel may not be aware of some of what we've chatted about today. So thank you for being here.
Can I say?
Yeah,
I want to thank Jen and Jolene for all the work they've done.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
That's a lot more information than we got from the first one. I know that we asked questions and they didn't have a lot,
Yeah,
like the important questions.
yeah.
And we looked at the boards, but that doesn't mean a lot to any of us.
That's right, and it's really important that we recognize that this is not about just our feelings, this is about the facts. And the facts can speak for themselves. So, thank you all for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What happened with the, after the meeting in July, about you on the First Nations, we're gonna get